On October 2nd, 2020, young Madison Sparrow went to meet her friends for ice cream but never returned home. Her mother immediately reported her missing to the police. Were revealed. Case. Before graduating from elementary school, she met another heroine of this story. Annika Stolchinski, a girl of the same age, was born in Newark on July 9, 2003. They immediately became close classmates and studied for exams together. Information about Annika's life is limited. However, it is known that her parents were Robert Stolchinski and Robin Kearns, and that as of 2004, the family lived on Aranoni Meat Drive in Newark. Annika and Madison graduated from elementary school and began attending high school, where they met new friends, including the third key character in this story, Noah Sharp, also a Newark native, born on August 23, 2001. All that is known about Noah's background and family status is that his mother, Nikki Sharp, had two other children, David and Brianna. More than once, the three friends would go out for ice cream or take long walks through the vast green spaces surrounding the city. But when Noah and Madison met, the attraction was mutual. And within a few months, a young romance had blossomed between them. At first, they were head over heels in love. But in early 2020, after just over a year of dating, Madison decided to break up with Noah for no apparent reason. They parted on the best of terms and agreed to remain friends. But Noah was heartbroken, still in love with her. During this time, Annika became Noah's confidant. They began seeing each other more often and texting almost daily, although the young man's heart was still broken. After a while, he started dating a girl, despite his relationship with Annika, but he also kept in touch with Madison. He even visited her on her 17th birthday on September 12, 2020, and brought her a gift. That day, Madison's mother, noticed that he was still upset about the breakup. When Annika learned of this meeting, she was overcome with jealousy. She couldn't accept that the man she loved was still friends with his ex-girlfriend, and hatred overtook her. Noah's resentment also grew into anger, and he wanted to hurt Madison for not experiencing the same suffering he did. Over the next week, blinded by hatred and jealousy, he and Kana began plotting to end Madison's life. Through text messages, FaceTime, and even a casual meeting, they exchanged ideas about possible weapons and ways to dispose of the body after the crime. The messages the teenagers sent each other as they devised their plan were chilling, indicating their intention to make the girl suffer. Annika suggested several options to Noah, including using a knife to inflict a fatal wound to the heart. But they also discussed the possibility of using a shotgun or a bat. According to official documents, they quickly rejected the shotgun because it made too much noise, and although Noah was unsure, they settled on using a blunt object. During these conversations, they also ran calculations to determine how many bricks would be needed to keep Madison's body from floating if they decided to dump her in the water. When in doubt, they suggested burying her was one option, as Noah could dig a hole and knew where to get shovels. Eventually, they came up with what they thought was the perfect plan. Madison was as big a fan of ice cream as she was of Halloween. Her cheerful spirit waited all year for October to arrive, so she could celebrate her favorite holiday all month long. Annika knew Madison's tastes well, and taking advantage of this, on Friday, October 2nd, 2020, she called her to invite her over for ice cream and a day out. Madison immediately agreed. She hadn't spoken to her friend in a while and wanted to buy a gift for Molly, whose birthday was in 3 days. That day, Madison wore black tights, denim shorts, gray boots, a blue sweatshirt with the word New Jersey written on it, and white ghost earrings in anticipation of Halloween. At 2:44 p.m., she said goodbye to Heather, saying she'd see her later, and left. That was the last time her mother saw her alive. A few hours later, Heather began receiving insulting text messages from Madison's number, telling her she was leaving the country. She thought it was a joke and even replied that he wished her luck in carrying out her plan and that she had forgotten her passport, which was in the safe. Heather received no answer, and although she also called her daughter's phone, there was no answer. When the woman began receiving the messages, she was on Small Street, taking her to Girl Scouts and swimming. She didn't understand anything, but the lack of a response made her begin to worry. Heather decided to call Annika, knowing they were supposed to meet that afternoon. When the woman answered, she burst into tears and told her that Madison had insulted her and dropped her off at the store. She then suggested calling Noah, but the woman had already tried calling, and he wasn't answering. Heather then asked her to try contacting him together. They talked, but the woman received no information. After which, the frustrated Heather decided to return home. On the way, she received several messages from her daughter's friends, who had also received strange text messages, wanting to know what was going on. Arriving home, Heather searched for any traces of her daughter, but found nothing to indicate that she had run away. Even the money she'd been given for her birthday was in her room, as were her clothes and credit card. These messages were very Around 8:30 p.m., when she didn't return home, Heather called 911 and filed a missing person report for her daughter. She then continued to contact people, but all her efforts were unsuccessful. Upon learning of the incident, Heather's parents traveled from out of town to help their daughter. Heather also informed Madison's estranged father. He lived in Colorado, but immediately posted a message on social media asking for help finding his daughter. The next day, on Saturday, October 3rd, 2020, the Delaware State Police's second squad issued a gold alert for 17-year-old Madison. This alert initiates all procedures necessary to search for a missing person. In Delaware, it is activated when a teenager goes missing. For 2 days, police search teams, family members, and dozens of friends combed the farm fields near the University of Delaware, where Madison was last seen alive. Local media also published a wanted notice asking for any information. Meanwhile, Delaware County Police and state troopers began interviewing Madison's friends. All evidence pointed to her ex-boyfriend. According to some reports, she went to a wooded area in Newark behind an elementary school, where Noah had also been seen on the day of her disappearance. Detectives then detained and interrogated him for nearly 9 hours, from October 4th to 5th, telling several contradictory stories and insisting he didn't know what happened to Madison. He finally broke down, leaving everyone horrified. He not only admitted to killing her, but also claimed Annika was his accomplice. Noah told police that Annika hated Madison because she was jealous of him. He also described how deeply the breakup had hurt him. According to Noah, Annika had driven him in the wooded area behind the elementary school. He hid behind some bushes with an aluminum bat as they walked along a trail. He told officers how happy Madison was to be with her friend and how unprepared she was for what awaited her. Then, he said, he suddenly emerged from hiding and hit her twice in the head, but admitted to putting all his force into the second blow and added that it was at that moment that he lost it. After several months, some to an area under a bridge, located near the intersection of I-95 and Delaware State Road, about 15 minutes from the crime scene and near a warehouse. Upon arrival, they attempted to dispose of the body in the river, but when that failed, they decided to hide it in a shallow grave they dug in the same location. Using information provided by the boy, detectives combed the area he had indicated. There, they discovered an aluminum bat, which had been used as a weapon, with traces of blood on it. The clothing Madison had worn when she left the house was also found at the crime scene. Some of the clothing was charred. The suspect then led investigators to a wooded area near the intersection of I-95 and Delaware State Road, where he and his accomplice buried the body. Lance Corporal Kazir Piper reported the discovery of the body on Monday, October 5, 2020. The shock of this news stunned Madison's family, her friends, and the entire community. A few days later, on Friday, October 9th, hundreds gathered on the high school football field to honor the victim. A cover-up revealed that Madison's death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head. However, forensic experts found DNA from Noah and Annika in evidence, collected at both the crime scene and the scene where the body was discovered. Noah was charged with first-degree murder and possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, first-degree conspiracy. He was placed in a correctional facility on $1 million bail. On Monday, November 16, 2020, more than a month after the tragic event and after the necessary evidence was processed, 17-year-old Annika was also arrested. Her arrest occurred after a New Castle County grand jury indicted her on charges of first-degree murder and possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, first-degree conspiracy. Meanwhile, Madison's family was at a loss. Heather repeatedly stated that she, until reasonable cause was found to explain why her daughter's life was taken. Her primary request for justice was that the perpetrators would never again be able to harm others or themselves. Although Noah confessed to the crime to a detective, during his formal arraignment, he pleaded not guilty. In response, speculation arose that his defense might argue that he was mentally ill. At one of the preliminary hearings, his attorney stated that Noah was undergoing treatment for possible schizophrenia at the time of the murder and was under the care of a psychiatrist. The attorney also claimed that Noah was shot in Chester County, Pennsylvania, approximately 3 weeks before the crime. She explained that a head injury had caused her client to experience memory loss and other problems, but she did not specify the cause of the head injury or its severity. Nevertheless, in May 2021, Annika pleaded guilty to charges of first-degree murder and first-degree conspiracy. Her attorneys struck a deal with prosecutors in which she agreed to testify against Noah about his plot to end Madison's life. According to court documents, several people, including the victim's relatives, told police they knew Noah had an alter ego or second personality. However, prosecutors claimed it was Noah himself who leaked this information. After a 2-year wait for justice, the defendant's trial began in New Castle County on October 20, 2022. Approximately 30 witnesses were heard, most of whom were called by Deputy Attorneys General Matt Frawley and John Downs, were played in the New Castle County courtroom. Hours of video recordings of Noah's interrogations with state police detectives. The audience watched the boy's changing stories until he finally confessed. The defense attempted to object to this evidence, emphasizing that police interrogated their client for too long. Defense attorney Monica Jeremina noted that the detectives staged the interrogation, prompting Noah to speak, pressuring him to confess. The prosecution also presented text messages exchanged between Noah and Annika to plan the crime. Faced with this evidence, the defense attempted to convince everyone that someone else had controlled the defendant's device and that he hadn't been texting the girl. Noah's mother and brother were called to testify consecutively and repeatedly contradicted each other. Nikia stated that her son wasn't wet when he returned home on the evening of October 2nd, while David claimed his brother was wet and looked like he'd waded into a swamp. Nikia reported that shortly after her son's arrival, Annika entered the house calmly. David, on the contrary, said the girl entered the house angrily, slamming the door. Furthermore, prosecutor Matt Fraley asked Nikia if she had spoken to Noah about the evidence against him. She replied, no. However, prosecutors played an audio recording of a phone call between the defendant and his mother a month before the trial, in which evidence captured by the elementary school's surveillance camera was discussed. In this conversation, he also reported in the video of him and Annika walking near the school an hour before Madison's murder, his face was not visible. However, the video shows an African-American man of the same height and build as the other, holding a baseball bat, walking into the woods with the girl. The defense also questioned the defendant's relatives about the head injury the young man allegedly sustained on September 13, 2020. And another unconfirmed blow he sustained while falling off his bicycle several hours before the police interview on October 4. The defense suggested that these bruises could have caused dissociative amnesia, attempting to justify his testimony to police. Faced with this, prosecutors questioned whether the injury was simply part of a conspiracy to kill Madison, a question the defense disputed half-heartedly. As reported, the prosecution's arguments were all made during its testimony at the trial, which lasted approximately 3 hours. She calmly recounted how Noah convinced her that Madison had talked about her behind her back. However, the victim's family and friends emphasized that she never spoke ill of her friends. Finally, after 8 days of trial and more than 250 exhibits presented by prosecutors, the jury needed no more than 3 hours to reach a final verdict and deliver it to Judge Ferris Orton on Thursday, October 27, 2022. Before announcing the verdict, the judge asked those present to remain calm. 22-year-old Noah Sharp was found guilty of all charges, including first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the jury's decision was announced, neither did his mother. Instead, the Sparrow family burst into tears of relief. Before leaving the courtroom, Noah turned and looked at his mother with a smile. In Annika's case, when the accuser and Noah's sentence were announced, prosecutors stated that, in accordance with the law, she was recommended to receive a life sentence, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Since she was a minor at the time of the crime. Friends, what do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and other social media accounts. You can find links to them in the description below this video. This is not goodbye.